a lot. Boy, thank you all for coming out tonight. We've got a lot to do. First, though, I'd like to introduce somebody I think is in the audience. Anna Sheckman, are you here? Anna, yeah, will you stand up? Anna is one of the youngest people ever to have a crossword in the New York Times. She had a crossword when she was 19 years old. They're a student at Swarthmore.
Oh, Swarthmore.
She's had 2 crosswords so far, and I'll tell you what they are. You're a little too loud here. Yeah, probably working on the sound. Okay, one of them, her debut crossword was in May 2010, and it had punny answers like this. The clue was chokes after bean eating, and the answer was, it was a play on the phrase goes out on a limb, but she makes it goes out on a lima. Chokes after bean eating. And then she took the phrase lamb chops and changed the B to an A, and the clue was, well, the answer was llama chops, and the clue was monks karate blows. She took the phrase honeycomb and changed the B to an A to make honeycoma, which was the result of a sweetener overload. She had another one besides, and then at the bottom of the grid, toward the bottom, she had grade inflation, which is changing B to A. And then she had a crossword in last March, where every once in a while there'll be a crossword where you don't enter just a regular letter in a square, but a picture or a phrase or something. And Anna had a puzzle where you were to enter Greek letters in certain squares. For example, the answer home game was in 4 squares. You drew an H and then an omega and G and M-E, which spells home game, and that crossed income gap, which is INC omega P. And she also had beta in the middle of Tibetan monk crossing BET award. And she also had alpha and pi in the puzzle, and running across the middle of the grid was it's all Greek to me. Very pretty. I've published 28 teenagers in the New York Times since I took over in 18 years. In the old days, crosswords were thought to be a pastime mainly for older folks. Nowadays, they're still a pastime for older folks, but I'd like to think that they're a pastime for everybody. So as I mentioned, 28 teenagers in the last 18 and a half years that I've been at the Times, and there are only 4 teenagers known to have had crosswords published in the whole history of the Times crossword up to me. How many people here solve crosswords, at least occasionally? That's great. How many have ever heard me on NPR Sunday morning? That was great, thank you. Well, we have lots to do tonight. I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite crosswords of the last 12 months in the New York Times. I'll tell you about how crosswords are made, a little about their history, what I do as an editor. Then if there's a time if you have any questions you'd like to ask me about crosswords, puzzles, or anything else, you can ask me. And then at the end, we have audience participation word games, a game I've invented called Beat the Champ, which we'll do. But first, let me tell you about some of my favorite puzzles of the last year. One of them was a Sunday puzzle by Peter Collins. It appeared on July 3rd. It was called My Treat. There were 26 circled letters in the grid. And instructions at the top said, when this puzzle is done, the circles will contain 5 different letters of the alphabet. Connect each set of circles containing the same letter to make a closed shape. The resulting 5 shapes together will form a picture of a 117 across. The 5 letters can be rearranged to name a good place to get a 117 across. So some of the long answers in the puzzle were seltzer water, flavored syrup, flexible straw, tall glass, and 2 scoops. 117 across was ice cream soda. And there were circle letters in the grid, as the instructions said, and you form the shapes, And the picture showed a tall glass with a flexible straw, 2 scoops of ice cream, and you could rearrange those 5 letters to spell diner.
Wow.
Ice cream soda. That was just an incredible construction, something to pull off. Okay, another Sunday puzzle from November 6th was called Baker's Dream. It was by Elizabeth Gorski. And Elizabeth is a violist in New York City. And she had answers, they were vertical. This thing worked down answers, D-N-U-O-P, which is pound, reading upward. And she also had short reading upward, and angel food, and German chocolate. And the answer near the bottom of the grid was pastry chef creations, and it had 12 other answers in this puzzle. And the answer to that was upside down cakes. So clever.
Kills me.
All right, here's a puzzle that was near and dear to my heart. It was made by constructor Alex Bratsanos, who lives upstate somewhere in Pennsylvania. I forget the name of the town. And it was a Monday puzzle. Had answers table linen, net income, ball state, and paddle boat. I don't know if you can tell what those 4 things have in common. Table, net, ball, and paddle. But then also in the grid were the answers ping and pong, balanced symmetrically. And Alex was 18 years old when he sold me this puzzle. He was a high school senior. He had started making puzzles the previous fall, and he had set a goal for himself to have a crossword published in the New York Times before he graduated. So he sent me a bunch, he kept sending me puzzles over the year. I finally accepted one, and then he told me how old he was. So I scheduled the puzzle as quickly as I could, and by coincidence, the puzzle appeared on the day of his graduation. There was a kid, another constructor last year, his name was Milo Beckman. Sold me a puzzle in February or March. I put it in my file because I have a lot of inventory. And then he sold me another one in June, maybe late May. He sold me another puzzle in late May. And where it came to my attention that he was 15 years old. So I scheduled this puzzle immediately. And he was a student at Stuyvesant High School in New York City. And he entered Harvard this fall at the age of, last fall at the age of 15. There was an unusual puzzle last October by Kevin Durr, appeared on October 7th. It was a tribute to Steve Jobs, and here's how it happened. Here's what came about. On Wednesday, October 5th, Steve Jobs died, and the news was released to the public around 6:30 in the evening. Kevin works in Silicon Valley, and decided that he would like to pay tribute to Steve Jobs by making a puzzle. So he emailed me a completed puzzle at 11:30 that night. And I thought about it overnight and decided, okay, yes, I'll do whatever it takes to get the puzzle in the paper as quickly as possible. I'll tell you what was in it. He had the answers Macintosh, which was, the clue was brainchild of 57 across, that's Steve Jobs. Think Different, which was a slogan associated with 157 across. Creative Genius is a frequent description of. Pixar, film studio spearheaded by. Apple is a company co-founded by. iPod is a brainchild of. And Next was a company founded by. And toward the bottom of the grid was Steve Jobs, this puzzle's object. So I accepted the puzzle in the morning. Edited it immediately, sent it to my 3 test solvers, which I send PDFs to of all the puzzles. First of all, I work at home. So I edited the puzzle, sent it to the test solvers. They tested it, got back to me within a couple of hours, their comments. A friend of mine went into the New York Times and got the puzzle in electronic form so that it could appear in the next day's paper, ripped out the puzzle that was scheduled for Friday, and put this one in instead. And so it appeared, the whole puzzle was done in less than 24 hours from Steve Jobs' death. And I'll tell you one more puzzle that was special last year. Let me ask you, what the holiday during the year that's always celebrated in the crossword is Christmas, because it's something that most people celebrate. It's an important time of the year, and there's so many things about Christmas that you can make puzzles around. What do you think is the next holiday that's always commemorated in the crossword? not Halloween, no. Not Thanksgiving.
4th of July.
Not 4th of July. It's April Fool's Day is correct.
Oh, naturally.
And last April 1st, Elizabeth Long on Friday had the long answers were down. She had oncoming traffic, which was vertical answer toward the left side of the grid. Middle of the road was running right down the
puzzle
middle of
was
the grid,
out of control.
and reading up on the right side was northbound lanes. And in fact, all of the vertical answers on the right side of the grid read upward, just as if you were on a highway. Drove solvers crazy. Those are some special puzzles in the last 12 months that I think were remarkable. What makes a good crossword? Well, there's some basic rules that you have to follow if you're constructing a crossword. First of all, the diagram has to be symmetrical, and generally that means the pattern of black squares will look the same or upside down, that is rotated 180 degrees as they did right side up. And the reason for this is visual appeal. A diagram that is aesthetically pleasing is more likely to draw the solver in and be satisfying to do. Second rule is we don't allow unchecked squares in American crosswords. Every answer has to appear in 2 words, across and down. So if you don't know the answer in one direction, you've got chances at all the letters in the other direction. We don't allow 2-letter words in American crosswords because there aren't very many of them. They're mostly prepositions and they're not very interesting. So minimum length is 3 letters. And then there's a rule that you would think would be obvious for anyone ever starting to create crosswords, but I can't tell you how often this rule is violated by first-time contributors, and that is, every answer has to be a real word or phrase. You can't make stuff up. Maura Jacobson, who's one of the grand old ladies of crossword constructing, tells a story of her first crossword she submitted to the Times. When she came to write the clues for her grid, she found one of the words was misspelled.
Oh, no.
So rather than change the grid, she wrote her clue and then she put :variant.
I swear they...
Margaret Farrow was the editor then wrote back, and she was so sweet. She said she had looked at all her dictionaries and couldn't find the spelling anywhere. Yeah, everything has to be real. So if you follow the rules, that just kind of gets your foot in the door. Then I look at the quality of the puzzle. First I'll look at the theme, if the puzzle has a theme. And these examples I just gave you were extraordinary themes. Not all puzzles will be as amazing or clever as that. I'm not sure you want something as amazing or clever like that every single day. But it should be something interesting and fresh. And then I look for the quality of the vocabulary. You know, words that are fresh, lively, colorful, things that you haven't seen in crosswords before. Should be a minimum of obscurity and as little crosswordese as possible. And crosswordese, those, you know, if you do crosswords, you know these words. They're the short ones that have lots of vowels, very friendly and for crossword construction, but you really don't want them in your puzzle. You know, E-R-N-E, it's a sea eagle. You know, it's a real word. If you study marine biology, you'll probably hear of it earned, but it's not something you really want in a puzzle. Esne, E-S-N-E, it's an Anglo-Saxon slave. Try to avoid Esne. Yeah. I'll tell you a little about the history of the crossword. You'd think something as basic as interlocking words across and down and putting them in a grid would go back centuries at least. But in fact, crosswords were a 20th century American invention. In fact, the centennial is coming up next year. The world's first crossword appeared in the New York World, which was an old newspaper. It appeared on December 21, 1913. It was the invention of Arthur Wynne, who was the editor of a Sunday section called Fun. It was an immediate hit with solvers, started to appear in regularly in the world. And I'll tell you, the world's first crossword was called a word cross. The third week the puzzle appeared, there was a mistake made and the words were accidentally transposed to crossword. And Arthur Wynne didn't care, he just let the mistake go through. And by accident, that's how the name has been ever since.